All right, let's see. Welcome everybody to the stream. I hope you're all fine. So we began an interesting journey of learning FastAPI. And yeah, today we're having the 11th stream. Okay, so you may know, I have documentation right here open, so we've been using. And we've looked at so many things. We began from Python types intro, concurrency, ASIC, await. We're now into the tutorial and user guide. We've gone through all this from path parameters, query parameters, request body, query parameters and validations, path parameters and numeric validations, query parameters, body, multiple parameters, fields, nested models. And now today we are looking at declare request example. Okay, so if you're joining us for the first time, you can either watch along or watch the previous streams. And of course, we are going all the way until the end of this documentation so that we fully understand what is going on. And from there on, I can now build an application, a live backend using FastAPI. All right. So let me go ahead with this. So title says declare request example data. Says you can declare examples of the data your app can receive. Here are several ways to do it. The first one is extra JSON schema data in Pydantic models. This is the first way, okay? So they're saying you can declare examples for a Pydantic model that will be added to the generated JSON schema. Okay, so you can declare examples. So we need to learn and know how to declare these examples. So they have your Pydantic v2 and Pydantic v1. Okay, so of course v2 is the latest. Okay, let's start with v2 and see what they have here. Of course, the first thing is importing FastAPI from FastAPI, base model from Pydantic. We have an instance of FastAPI here. Then we have an item which inherits from base model, which makes item a Pydantic model. Then I have name, which is a string. I have description, which is a string or none. And default value is none. I have price, which is a float. Tax, which is a float or none. And the default value is none. Then we have here the example you're talking about, okay? Using model config. Remember model config? We studied the model config in a few streams, okay? So model config is a dictionary, okay, which takes in which is simply configuration for our Pydantic model. And the first thing we have here is JSON underscore schema extra, okay, which is a key and whose value is another dictionary, okay? And this dictionary has a key called examples, okay, whose value is a list, okay, of dictionaries. But for now, we only have one dictionary inside here. And the example is this, okay? We say we have a name foo, which represents this. We have a description, okay, saying a very nice item, which is for this. Then we have a price, which is an example for this. And then tax, which is an example for this tax value, okay? So all this represents this. So this is how you can give an example so that when the front-end developer, okay, is studying your API and wants to understand what it's all about, they simply look at the example and they understand it in depth. And I think this is a good thing for us to learn or for me to know early on. And of course, they have a path operation function with item ID as a path variable. Then they have a path operation. I mean, this is the path operation decorator, not function. This one, which I've highlighted, is the path operation function. Okay, having item ID as a path parameter, which is an integer, and item, which is a request body parameter. And then of course a dictionary, okay, having item ID and item, and of course the return results, which is simply a dictionary. But this, we've seen all this before, we know what all this is before, but what we want is this, how to give an example in your JSON schema. So let us see for Pydantic version 1, okay. So for Pydantic version 1, you put a nested class, okay. You're seeing the nesting a class config. So version 2, use model config dictionary. version 1 using a nested class, a class inside another class. And then they have here a dictionary called schema extra with the key code examples, okay? And of course, a list, okay? And inside that list, we have a dictionary, okay? Which represents this data up here, all these attributes: name, description, price, and tax. Same thing up here: name, description, price, and tax. Yeah, so I'll go with V2. So I can copy this. I don't know whether they have an example down here. I just want to copy and replace everything here, okay? So that I can run FastAPI. Now I want to run this command manually because this is that I'd forgotten it. FastAPI main.dev, okay? So I can go to this address and go to /docs, okay? If I open this and I scroll, you see, they give an example value. We have this, which is good, okay? Get an example value, okay? This is very, very good. So I will get back to the documentation and scroll down and read, say, the extra info will be added as is to the output JSON schema for that model, and it will be used in the API docs, just like we have seen here. It's being used in the API docs. So let's move on. They say in Pydantic version 2, you would use the attribute model config that takes a dictionary as described in Pydantic docs configuration. Okay. So yeah, there's no need to know this now. What is inside the documentation? Right now, our interest is knowing how to give an example. If there's any other configuration, of course, we can learn it with time. So after that, I can now go on to the next thing, which says you can set JSON schema extra with a dictionary containing any additional data you would like to show up in the generated JSON schema, including examples. Okay, so JSON schema extra is a dictionary containing any additional data we want to show up in the generated JSON schema, and examples is one of them right here. Okay, so JSON extra schema contains additional information that we want to show in this documentation, and one of them is examples. That's what they're trying to say. If I've understood, if I've not understood it well, please let me know in the chat. So, or the comment section, that is if you're watching this later after the stream. So we have a tip. They're saying you could use the same technique to extend the JSON schema and add your own extra info. So they're saying, for example, you could use it to add metadata for front-end user interface, among others. Okay, which is good. Okay, maybe you want to give an explanation for each of those attributes. I guess that's where you do it. So they have info here. It's saying OpenAPI 3.1.0 used since FastAPI 0.99 added support for examples, which is part of the JSON schema standard. Before that, it only supported keyword example with a single example. Okay. That is only supported by OpenAPI 3.1.0. Okay. But is deprecated and is not part of the JSON schema standard. So you're encouraged to migrate example to examples. Okay. So the whole point is using example as a keyword as a single example. The keyword example representing one example has been deprecated or removed. Okay. So going forward, simply use examples. So they're simply saying use examples. Okay. If you're using example, move to examples. And they're saying you can read more at the end of this page. So let's continue. So they're saying field additional arguments. So they're saying when using field, okay, remember we used field. Field is important from Pydantic, okay, and it's used to add metadata and validation to a field of a Pydantic model. So they're saying when using field, the field function with Pydantic models, you can also declare additional examples. Excuse me. Let me take some water. Remember, field is simply a function which returns an instance of the field class. Okay, that's the difference. So what is going on here is this. Okay, we first of all import FastAPI, import base mode and field. We know this, create an instance of FastAPI. Then they are creating a class item base model. Then here they have attributes name, which is a string, and using field, okay, they are adding an example for field. But an example is full, is full, I mean, okay. So I guess this means, actually, I like this naming. Instead of saying example, they say example, because you might want to give more than one example. And now this makes sense how field adds metadata. So in this case, the metadata we are adding to name is this example full. Then you have description. Okay, we have here field default is none, but they're giving examples, a very nice item. Okay, then they have price, which is the float. They give an example, 35.5. Using examples, but they only have one example in this list, meaning you can give more than one. We shall try it out. They have tax, a default is none, and an example 3.2. Okay, so let's copy this. I come in the editor and paste. Okay, here's our data, our 3 fields, each showing examples. Okay, and whether all this is important for the documentation. So if I refresh, okay, you see what we get here. If I get back here and I change, I say full, comma, bar, I want to see what changes. Maybe you also put bars as AI suggests. 3 examples. So for name, okay, I am giving it 3 examples. Just do quick check on my network to make sure all is well. All right, okay, 3 examples. Let's go back to the documentation. If I refresh, okay, how come I can't see it? Okay, I was expecting to see it here. Maybe they'll explain. Okay, so this is me trying out things. If I scroll, okay, I can't see the what's changing. Okay, if I click on try it out, do I see any difference? Nothing. Okay, so let me see the endpoint. Still put slash items. Okay, when I come here and I refresh, yeah, so it's not changing. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, let me try to do this. Let me try to say nice item, not very, and I see if it changes. If it doesn't, I see this, they're saying to a nice item, so which means it's the right code. Okay, so I put a very, okay. If I remove full and I leave bar, I want to see what is going to happen. You see, we have only bar as one value. So I wonder why this is a list. Okay, because when you say example, it means I should put more than one example, and any of them should show up here in the schema. But of course, wait, you actually showing here saying bar, comma, food mislead actually, because this is what? A name. In this case, we expect one value. So showing more than one value here in the JSON schema in the API docs would be wrong. I now understand why they're only showing one, because it is not a list of strings. It's just one string, one value. If I change here the annotation, I say list of strings, I want to see what happens. Refresh. Okay, they haven't changed anything. Okay, all right, let me stop gambling and show documentation. But it doesn't hurt to gamble, all right? This is the way I learn, by trying out things and seeing what works or not. But let me go to the documentation. Let me not mislead any of you. Okay, so let me read on. Of course, like Azure, they have other variants that you can for all the versions of Python. So yeah, but we get the point. Example simply gives you an example value for name. This one also gives an example value for the description, and this one gives an example value for the price, and this one gives an example value for the tax. So when you move on, they're saying examples in JSON schema OpenAPI. So they're saying when using any of path, query, header, cookie, body, form, file. Of course, right now we have not looked at header, we have not looked at cookie yet, we have not looked at form, we have not looked at file, but we know about path, we know about query, we know about body. Okay, they're saying you can also declare a group of examples with additional information that will be added to their JSON schemas inside of OpenAPI. In other words, they're saying all these have examples. You can give examples for each of these or group them. So now we go to body with examples. So they're saying here we pass examples containing one example of the data expected in body. Okay. So we have an item-based model, but what we're interested in is this. Okay. So this is given on the exact time when you're annotating. Wow, which is pretty much serious. Okay. So if I copy all this, delete, paste. I need to reduce the size of this. Okay. And unfold the syntax slowly. Okay. So they have, okay, someone is asking me, saying, hello, buddy, can you explain me what you're making in short? Says hash already. So hash already, I assume you're joining us for the first time. So right now we are not building anything. Okay. I'm not making anything. I am simply learning FastAPI. And this is the part 11. Okay. I am going through the documentation. I began from up here, from Python intro types, concurrency. I'm now into the tutorial guide. I've looked at all these path parameters, query parameters, request body, query parameters and string, path parameters and numeric validation, query parameter models, multiple parameters, fields, nested models. I'm now here. Okay. And I'll go on until I finish this. So I'm not building any app. I'm simply learning FastAPI from the official documentation. Then later I'm going to build a project live. And of course, I'll use FastAPI for the backend. And now there I can even use AI to generate code for me, but I'll be understanding what I'm doing and I can go back and forth between FastAPI and FastAPI docs and AI and yeah, stuff like that. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So hash already. I hope that makes sense. And asking where are you from? Are you asking where I'm from? I live in East Africa. That's where I come from. Where do you come from? I'll be happy to know where you're from. Hash already. Let's and I hope I've not mispronounced your name. I hope I pronounced your name right. So let me continue with this. So I want to replicate that. Okay. So we have item. Okay. We have an item. Okay. I want to ignore what AI is giving me. So item is going to be annotated. Okay. Using this. Okay. So I'll say annotated like that. Square brackets. Then, so to follow closely, what are they annotating? They're annotating the item. Okay. We're saying item simply means that item. Okay. This item is going to be of type item. This is the type of this. Then comma, we put in extra data, which is the body. Okay. So body tells FastAPI that item is a query, mean a request body parameter, not a query parameter, but a request body parameter. That is what item does. Okay. Item tells, body tells FastAPI that item, rather this item is a request body parameter. Why? Because item is a base model, a Pydantic base model. So after that, okay, I'm saying you now can come inside here and say examples. Okay. equals a list, okay? And then you can now put a dictionary, okay? Like that, okay? And now you can say name, okay? Name is probably bar, okay? Like that. So this is an example. Well, AI is going crazy with completion. So then we have for description also, comma, and okay, say sample description. But now, of course, this has to be formatted, okay? So like they did, they can put this on the next line, put this on the next line, put that on the next line. Let me see, how do they format it? There's a tool called Black. Some people can use something called, is it rough? Let me try to use it. But it ain't working. Open the new terminal and say Black main.py. Yeah, it has formatted the code for us. Okay. So you see, we have an example of this, of all this. Okay, name, description, price. So in other words, they're telling us that you can give, instead of putting the example here, you can put the example right here. Okay. And I personally, I'm not saying that I prefer to do it up here. Okay, rather than here. Oh, Hasha is from India. Nice to meet you, Hasha, and thank you for joining the stream. I hope you're enjoying this. You have a name similar to some person I used to watch back then when I was learning Java. It was called Naveen Reddy from a channel called Telusko. He's also from India and lives in a place, is it called Bangalore? I hope I'm not pronounced the place wrongly. Yeah. So yeah, nice to. I hope you're learning something. Nice to know that someone from India. Actually, even yesterday, someone, I think not yesterday, but a few days ago, someone from India was on this stream, and I'm really happy to know that you're here. So let's continue. So this is how you give, and up here they said you can do examples with path, query, body, any of these. Okay. So which means if I come and I say comma, if I remove this, okay, maybe let's use the first one, okay? If item ID, for example, is annotated, you say annotated with an integer, but for it, it's a path variable, okay? Like this, path. So also path, for it, we can, so I need to import path, like this. I need to import path. Also for path, I can give an example. I can say examples equals to, like that. Then I give an example, okay, of an item ID, maybe something like 40.88. Okay, this becomes a valid example for this. So meaning path, body, query, what we have looked at so far, all have these examples argument, where you give an example of the type of data your API should accept. Okay, this is good for your front-end developer, good for your mobile developer, good for your desktop developer, good for another person reading your API, another backend, maybe another AI. Okay, so this would make AI, if you tell AI maybe to write tests for this function, it will write very fast. Okay, because you've written your code very well and it knows exactly what to call this endpoint with. So let's continue. So they're saying example in the docs UI. They're saying with any of the methods above, it would look like this in /docs, meaning this. Okay. And we have been to this endpoint. So if I do this and hit enter and open here, okay, it's the same thing. Okay, so it's the same idea. See the example. They're saying love from India. Thank you, ready, hash ready. How can I contact you? May I know about the qualification? Yeah, you can contact me via LinkedIn using the same name. Okay. My qualification. I have a bachelor's in software engineering. Okay. And also I have a certificate of software engineering from ALX. Okay, that's my qualification from school. Okay, but I don't grade myself according to the paper I have, according to the degree and certificate. No, I value myself or grade myself according to what I can do. Okay, because most of what I use professionally, I didn't learn it from university. I learned it from YouTube and internet and reading documentation and learning the way I'm doing right now. Okay, yeah. But if you want for papers, yeah, I have a degree in software engineering. So let's continue. They're saying body with multiple examples. So we have been looking at one example. So they're saying you can, of course, pass multiple examples, and they're showing us here. Okay. This is the first example, second example, third example. Okay. So you simply put a comma, then you add. Put a comma and add. And remember, all this has to match what you have here. Okay. So we can copy all this. Okay. To avoid wasting time. Okay. So we have see that our multiple examples here. So Hashrod, I hope I've answered your question. Well, let me know if I misunderstood. So if I refresh this, okay, I don't see them though. Okay, let's read on because I'm counting on their explanation. Okay, so we have put multiple examples, but how do we see them? What next? So they're saying when you do this, the examples will be part of the internal JSON schema for that body data. So they're saying, nevertheless, at the time of writing this, Swagger UI, the tool of showing the docs, doesn't stop showing multiple examples for the data in JSON schema. But read below for a workaround. They're saying, nevertheless, at the time of writing this, at the time when they wrote this documentation, Swagger UI, the tool in charge of showing the docs UI, doesn't support showing multiple examples for the data in JSON schema. Oh, this is now what makes sense. So what they're trying to say, even if you show multiple examples, there is one example, two, three, okay, it will be part of the internal JSON schema. Okay, but Swagger, which is responsible for showing this user interface, will not show multiple examples here. So they're trying to say. So it makes sense where I added many to what we had before. And when I came here, I was not seeing them. It was not making sense to me. So this makes sense that it cannot be shown. Right now, they have not implemented that. So if I scroll, they're saying, but read below for a workaround. So let's read. So they're saying open API specific examples. Okay. So they're saying since before JSON schema supported examples, OpenAPI had a support for a different field, also called examples. This OpenAPI specific examples goes in another section in the OpenAPI specification. It goes in the details for each path operation, not inside each JSON schema. Okay, English will make me bite my tongue. And Swagger UI has supported this particular examples field for a while, so you can use it to show different examples in the docs UI. Okay, so I want to read everything again. Since before JSON schema supported examples, OpenAPI had a different field also called examples. Okay, so JSON schema supported examples, but OpenAPI also had, so there are two fields. OpenAPI having a field called examples, JSON schema also has examples. So they're saying this OpenAPI specific examples goes in another section in the OpenAPI. So they have another section within their specification that has examples as something. And they say it goes in the details for each path operation, not inside each JSON schema. Okay. Then, of course, now we know what path operations are. And if you don't, you can watch the previous videos. So they're saying, and Swagger UI has supported this particular examples field for a while. So you can use it to show different examples in the docs UI. Okay. So they're saying the shape of this open API specific field example is a dictionary with multiple examples instead of a list, each with extra information that will be added to Open API 2. So they're saying this doesn't go inside of each JSON schema contained in OpenAPI. This goes outside in the operation directly. Okay. So they're saying using the OpenAPI examples parameter, you can declare the OpenAPI specific examples in FastAPI with the parameter OpenAPI examples. Okay. So OpenAPI examples is specific to OpenAPI. Let's take note of that. Okay. And they said this applies all this to path, query, okay, and body, which you looked at, but also header, cookie, form, and file. We're going to look at this soon. So it says the keys of the dict identify each example and each value in another dict. So they're saying each specific example dictionary in the examples can contain a summary. We know what a summary is, a short description for the example, can contain a description, which is a long description that can contain markdown. Markdown is like the type of format you have in your README on GitHub. Then they have value. They're saying this is the actual example shown. Okay. External value. This is an alternative to value. Saying a URL pointing to the example, although this might not be supported by as many tools as value. Good to know. So they're saying you can use it like this. If we come here, you see what they have. Okay. They have body, OpenAPI examples. So there are two. Right? There's OpenAPI underscore examples and just saying examples. If you go up here, there's examples. Okay. For the JSON schema. Okay. Then there's OpenAPI examples. That's what I don't know if you guys are following. That's what they've just been trying to say all this time. All this. Hashred says sounds good. Can we connect in IG on another platform? Like I'm a junior developer, so we can have a chance to connect each other. Yes, let's connect. Can you please reach out on LinkedIn? I'm not actually active on IG because I think I lost my IG account long time ago, and I'm not back on IG anymore. Yeah, I feel like IG is a platform for pictures and whatever, and I fail to keep up with that kind of lifestyle, taking pics and whatever. Yeah, but probably soon I should consider creating an IG account again. Okay. Yeah. But X, by the X, I'm also on X. Okay. Yeah, you can find me on X by the same name, LinkedIn by the same name. Actually, those are the platforms that we software developers use to interact a lot. Yeah, X and LinkedIn. I'm actually active on X and LinkedIn. If you send me a message there, we can really interact and connect. Yeah. And it's good that you're starting out. If you're starting out your career as a junior, I welcome you to this field of software engineering. It's pretty interesting. So let's see. Okay, so if you come here, okay, we even know what this asterisk means from a stream. We discussed this. They said once you find this asterisk as the first param of a function, they say it does nothing really special, but simply makes all your data to be sent to you as key value pairs. Okay. So you look at these OpenAPI examples, you have normal. Okay. Remember they said up, if you read up here, they're saying for each specific example dict in the examples can contain summary, description, value, and external value. So here we're saying for normal, we have summary, description, the value, which is a dictionary. Converted, we have summary, description, value. Okay. Invalid, we have a summary and value. Okay. Take note of that. Okay. So they're saying OpenAPI examples in docs UI. So they're saying with OpenAPI underscore examples added to body, the docs would look like, if I come here, you see, would be able to choose a normal example, an example with converted data. So if I come back here, okay, and I refresh, you see, ours has nothing like that. Okay. But if I copy this same code, we should have the same. I get back here, I refresh. What is that? I see this. Give a normal example. I can change to example with converted data. This is second example. When I click, I have another example. Okay. So this is the hack they're telling us. If you go up here, where? There's a part where they say there's a workaround. Where is that? Aha. See, but read below for a workaround. Okay. So that workaround is using this OpenAPI examples, having the first one, second, and third. Okay, so you can use it when you need to. So when we go down here, they're saying technical detail. They're saying if you're already using FastAPI version 0.99 or above, you can probably skip these details. They're saying they are more relevant for older versions before OpenAPI 3.1 was available. So you're saying you can consider this a brief OpenAPI and JSON schema history lesson. We appreciate the history lesson, guys. Then there's a warning saying these are very technical details about the JSON. These are very technical details about the standards, JSON schema and OpenAPI. If the ideas above already work for you, that might be enough. Excuse me. And you probably don't need these details. Feel free to skip them. Okay. So yeah, they're telling us there's no need to read this. Okay. But I'll just go through it. Okay. So you're saying before OpenAPI 3.1, OpenAPI used an older and modified version of JSON schema. JSON schema didn't have examples. So OpenAPI added its own example field to its own modified version. So you're saying the JSON schema, which is responsible for generating this user interface, this documentation, did not have an examples. So OpenAPI added its own example field, okay, to allow people give examples. So they're saying OpenAPI also added example and examples fields to other parts of the specification. So other parts had now both example, meaning for one, examples for two. I guess so. Let's continue. So same parameter objects in the specification was used by fast APIs. Okay. Path, query, header, cookie. Okay. Then they go ahead and say request body in the field content on the media type that was used by fast APIs, body, file. And again, but it's just advanced. Okay. You don't need to really know this. It's kind of like a bit deep, but it's not bad, it's not hard. So I'm reading it. So they're saying this old OpenAPI specific examples parameter is now OpenAPI underscore API, OpenAPI underscore example since first API is 0.103. Okay. So the OpenAPI specific, which was removed, which was deprecated, is now called OpenAPI underscore examples. What we saw earlier. Okay. What enables you to have this? Remember, to have all this is what they're referring to. This. So it was changed. So now OpenAPI has OpenAPI underscore examples, but JSON schema stayed with examples. So there's now examples for JSON schema, and there's OpenAPI underscore examples for OpenAPI specific examples. Okay. Maybe let me just write it down here too, for those who may not be getting. Okay. Because I know sometimes it can be confusing. So this is what they're saying. Me do a doc string. Okay. Okay. So they're saying for OpenAPI, okay, for OpenAPI, if I can tap this rate, they're using, it's called OpenAPI examples like that, okay? For JSON schema, it is simply examples, okay? But then OpenAPI earlier, okay, before having OpenAPI examples, it was called examples, okay? Then they changed it to that. But JSON schema had nothing, okay? take note of that. JSON schema had nothing. So it was just this, okay? Then later they changed it to that. Then also JSON schema added their own, like that. What's this? Sometimes this way, sometimes I just hate these AI tools, just making my stuff dirty for no reason. Like, I'm not asking you to do anything. Why are you suggesting stuff? Which I mean, sometimes when I'm doing serious design work which needs thinking, I turn off autocomplete completely. And I think properly and finish my work faster. And then maybe later I can tell AI to review and see if there's anything missing. But still, I give the review myself. And that developers also have to review my work. Okay. So they're saying, but then the JSON schema, well, JSON schema added an example field to a new version of the specification. Okay. Meaning JSON schema did not have an examples field, but now they added it. Then they're saying, and then the OpenAPI 3.1 was based on the latest version of JSON schema 2020 to 2012 that included these new field examples. So they're saying now this new examples field takes precedence over the old and custom example field and is now deprecated. So examples replaces example. That's what they're trying to say. Okay. Because remember, example was already existing, okay, in OpenAPI's specification. But now the new examples field, okay, in JSON schema, which is also being used by the OpenAPI specification now, replaces example. Okay, that's what deprecated means. And now they're saying this new examples field in JSON schema is just a list of examples, not a dictionary with extra metadata as in other places in OpenAPI described about. Just a list of examples, like we have seen above. Okay, if I scroll up, before you see examples is a list. It's a Python list. We declare Python list using these brackets, square brackets. Simple as that. Okay, let's get done with this interesting topic. Yeah, I can't wait to now prompt AI to write my FastAPI applications and features, and then review AI's code and either throw away their code or accept it or modify AI code. It's going to be nice because now I see myself understanding a lot of things, and I hope you're also understanding as you watch. So they're saying even after OpenAPI was released with this new simpler integration with JSON schema, for a while, Swagger UI, the tool that provides the automatic docs, didn't support OpenAPI 3.1.0. It does since version 5.0. Wow, that's nice. And I'm very happy I'm learning at a time whereby Swagger UI now supports OpenAPI 3.0. Okay. So OpenAPI is the specification, meaning the rules. And Swagger UI simply generates the user interface, this, using OpenAPI specification. So they're saying because of that, versions of FastAPI previous to 0.99 still used versions of OpenAPI lower than 3.1. Okay, looks like we have still stuff to read. They're saying Pydantic and FastAPI examples. So they're saying when you add examples inside a Pydantic model using schema underscore extra or field, saying examples equals to something, that example is added to the JSON schema. So if you go up here, what we studied earlier, they're saying whether you do this, you say, I need to show you something. Where do we start from? Whether you use examples like this, or you use what else? Where is that? Where is that? Where is that schema info? Is this one? But the schema info is, we saw it earlier. Why am I losing it? Wow. Consider to hide, guys. So this is what I'm going to do. Okay. I am going to go where we are, this, and I control F. Aha, here it is. Okay. When I use this is the same thing. Okay. That's what they're saying. Then we continue. They're saying, and that JSON schema of the Pydantic model is included in OpenAPI of your API. Then it's used in the docs UI. Good. So you're saying in versions of FastAPI before 0.9, 0.9 and above, use the newer version of 3.1. When you use the example or examples with any of the other utilities like query and body, among others, those examples were not added to the JSON schema that describes the data. Not even OpenAPI's own version of JSON schema. They were added directly to the path operation declaration in OpenAPI. Outside the parts of OpenAPI that use JSON schema. But now that FastAPI 0.9 and above uses OpenAPI 3.1 and uses JSON schema 2020 to 12 and Soga UI 5.00 and above, everything is more consistent. And the examples are included in the JSON schema. Yeah, so they're just telling us what was old, what was new, what has changed, how things were working. So you're saying Swagger UI and OpenAPI specific example says now as Swagger UI didn't support multiple JSON examples, users didn't have a way to show multiple examples. No, there was no way to show multiple examples because Swagger UI, what makes for the user interface for the documentation, didn't support the JSON schema examples. So to solve that, first API is 0.103.0 added support for declaring the same old OpenAPI specific examples field with the new parameter OpenAPI examples. That's cool. That's cool. Okay, really cool. That is why now we have this OpenAPI examples. So we have a summary. They're saying I used to say I like history. I used to say I didn't like history that much. And look at me giving tech history lessons. Shame on you. Shame on you. So they're saying in short, upgrade to FastAPI 0.99.0 or above, and things are much simpler, consistent, intuitive, and you don't have to know all these historic details. That's the point. Work with the latest version of FastAPI, and you won't have to go all through this history. Okay, all will be good. Yeah, so this is good to know. And yeah, this brings us to the end of today's stream. Pretty basic, pretty easy, nothing complex, nothing hard. Simply to so today has just been how would you give you who is it? We who are backend developers. How do we tell people who are going to use our API, our backend, that this is how you should understand our data, the input, whether the input you're expecting is going to be path parameter. You have to give them an example to see, okay, what they should give you, okay, so that they don't have to send you a message via email or LinkedIn. What do you mean by this? Or give an example of your query parameter. Give an example of your request body. If you have multiple request bodies, multiple body parameters, then you also give multiple examples. You have multiple queries, give an example for each of those multiple queries. If you have multiple parameters, give an example for each of those multiple parameters. So this is a very good thing to know, to give examples for the parameters of your endpoints. Okay, very good. Okay, Hashudi says I had sent you connection in LinkedIn. Do you have your portfolio website or something? Not really. Actually, let me tell you something, by the guys. One time I had a portfolio website long time ago. I don't know, maybe 2017, 2018, and even I never got actually to use it. So most times when someone wants to know about me, I share my resume with my maybe work experience and tell them what I've done. 'Cause some projects I've worked on are private. I can't share them. And also, but I can talk about them without giving you the actual inside details. So back then I could just simply give people my GitHub. So my GitHub was my portfolio, okay, back then. Okay. And right now my job experience is more of like my portfolio. You don't have a portfolio. But let me check. I think I had one. I don't know if it is still up. but has right now, if I'm to look at it, it has probably like toy projects. Okay. But right now, github.com. So this is my GitHub. Okay. I use it. And right now, there are some things even I've not, like you see this. Okay. These things I've done here. On your end, you'll not be able to see them. Okay. I can see them because it's my account. Okay. But if you go, you not see them. Why? Because they are private repositories. Okay. But for beginners, usually I'll refer them to maybe come to here and try to look at what is public on my GitHub. Okay. Come and look at what is, because you see, like now this, I made an app. This is like a TypeScript project. I made an update 3 days ago, but you'll not be able to see it. Right? It's private. This one is public. Maybe you can study it. This one is also private. This one is private. I worked on it recently in April. Yeah. So go to my GitHub. Okay. Kenehe is my username. Okay. You can find me there and know more about. I have a portfolio today. I even don't remember its name. Okay. I don't know if it's still available something. Let me try to search. So I show you portfolio. I hope it's the one. Long time. You look at it. Look at this hash ready 5 years ago. Oh my god, it's crazy. I even don't I do document they look at my readme. It's toy. I was a real junior. So if I click on this, what does it give me? Okay, let me go to this and I try to do this. There you go. Let me try to get it on this other screen and paste it in the chat for you so that you can click on it. It's interesting that this thing actually still exists, but it has toy projects. I even feel ashamed for scrolling. I'm like 10 times better than this. It's not me. Let me copy it and paste. Yeah, you can find it in the chat. So that's my portfolio. So if you click here, shows you this, looks at my skill, look at some of these skills, Python, JavaScript. Right now, I wouldn't even put things like that anymore. Firebase, I wouldn't put it. I want to put my SIG. I want to put my MongoDB right now. Look at the projects. All these are really old projects that I wouldn't put on my portfolio anymore. But yeah, if you can read this to see how I began, how my journey began, and to let you know that you can always grow in your career. So thank you all for showing up. Really, I hope that helps you. Tomorrow we shall continue from extra data types. Okay. In fact, tomorrow I think we can cover two things: extra data types and cookie parameters, and so on and so forth. Okay. So thank you all for showing up. Thank you, Hasha Ready, for showing up today. Have a good rest of your day and see you soon. Bye bye.